Good morning. Questions?
Morning. Yeah, uh, so so I think this is more of a question I had for a long time. Uh, so basically, it's like basically like figuring out the fake versus like the real uh, teaching, or the fake versus the real guru, along that kind of line.
It's very
So
difficult
yeah, so
in the beginning.
yeah, so Yeah, so overall, like before I started reading the Sufi stuff, like before that, I had this like mistaken idea that a person who is enlightened or awakened, they are gonna be like really like like relaxed and calm and like more that kind of like personality, like very
They
kind
may
of
be.
chill,
They may be.
chill personality.
Uh huh.
And then I watched. Then I used to watch like Nisargadatta Maharaj, and he was
Yeah.
like very
He's
like
great. Yeah.
fast paced, fidgety kind of vibe that I would get,
Yes.
and I. Uh, but then I also see that in the Dharma work, there like a lot of focus on calming the mind, relaxing before contemplating or before doing something significant, right? So, so if that is the practice, how that didn't like that doesn't translate to a person actually becoming like kind of calm, and like how the fake gurus appear like that, like how it doesn't translate to that in a real like enlightened person.
Okay. Those are good issues. First, let's talk about fake versus real teachers and teaching. It's
Hmm.
very difficult when you're starting out to tell the difference between a fake and a real person. And the critical thing is that the teacher be enlightened themselves. But the problem is a lot of people fake this. And it's not that hard to do because if you dress like a holy man, and you walk around and you're very chill, and you talk in a soft voice and you sound wise and there are ways to fake this. This is a particular problem in Zen, actually, because people tend to judge by the external, and that's a huge mistake. And almost half of Sufi teaching, that's a bit of hyperbole, is that you must not judge the interior by the exterior, right? They
Hmm.
don't judge the container, judge the content, because the marketing in these areas, it can be quite sophisticated. So, rule number one: don't judge by superficial appearances. Rule number two, I think, comes from Jesus, and it says, "By their fruits you shall know them." So this is not an absolute guide, but it's a pretty close guide. You can tell by the fruit that the person, the woman or the man, what have they done with their life? What do they value really? Okay, and this is again, uh, this is just a hint, because there's also very many hypocrites who put on a big show of being philanthropic or being generous or compassionate or whatever, but inside they're seething with bad stuff. So these aren't really rules; these are more like guidelines. And then third, you can look at the people around him or her, and you can say something about that. Uh, and then fourth, you can ask, well, how does the person make a living? Is it an honest living? Because people who are awakened or enlightened cannot, their nature will not allow them to take advantage of people. And then, but then there's another problem, which is that someone can be awakened and be from a different culture. And who's coming to mind now is Osho. Osho was most certainly awakened, but he wasn't wise and he wasn't enlightened, unfortunately, because he was good at what he did, but he was in it for the money or the fame or the both or the Bentleys. I don't know, but so it's very tricky. Now, with regard to this stereotype of the, oh, I'm so chill, oh, I'm so enlightened, all this other stuff. It's easy to see how people get confused, because in meditation, the beginning stages of meditation, you want that. You want to stay calm. You want to stay, peaceful. You want to settle things down, slow things down. But that's just the first step. And so Nisargadatta, I think, provides a perfect example of someone who didn't have that temperament. And you have to distinguish temperament from level of realization. So some people have a very quiet temperament, like Rupert Spira comes to mind, very, very quiet. It's just his nature. You know people like this, right? And so they appear more holy, or they appear more enlightened, or whatever. And sometimes they are, but oftentimes that has nothing to do with it. Thomas Clary could be quite fiery at times, as Nisargadatta could be. And if you look at history, especially if in Zen, there's a beautiful book called The Eye of the True Teaching, or The Treasury of the Eye of the True Teaching, which is a collection of 10th century Zen stories and koans. And you'd be amazed at how these guys, they were hitting their students with sticks, and they were doing all kinds of stuff. They were fiery people, some of them. Others were more quiet and subdued. And so that has to do with a person's temperament, their biological, just like some are tall and some are short, some are thin and some are big. That has nothing to do with anything. Having said that, they should be able to master their mood if they need to or they want to, but many times it's not indicated. When Nisargadatta, it was a great example, like I said, was trying to get through to his students that were just wandering around the earth, going around in circles, from guru to guru, from teaching to teaching, from tradition to tradition. Yeah, he would yell at them, and he'd get in very, very agitated and fiery to try and get through their thick skulls. And it reminds me more of a Zen teacher, the authentic Zen teachers. And so another way you can tell, using Zen as an example, is if people are wearing costumes from the 10th century, or they're wearing costumes from another culture, or they're overly preoccupied with rituals, or with a dogma, or with a this is our way or the highway, then you're more likely dealing with a cult, like a Zen cult, or a Hindu cult, a Vedic cult, or something like that. And so, especially in the modern world where we have all this communication around the globe, it's easier to tell whether or not somebody has gotten fixated in a particular way of presenting themselves that they know is good for marketing. So if they're wearing costumes, it makes no sense. I mean, they're wearing a costume from 100, 200, 300 years ago, and they're in the modern world and they're modern people, that's a big red flag. So, so by their fruits, don't judge the container by don't judge the content by the container. The issue of temperament, the issue of who are they surrounded by, because like attracts like, birds of a feather flock together, and these kinds of, and the issue of temperament. I think I may have. Let's see what else. It's very hard to go by what you just feel in your gut in the beginning, because that's more often than not, it's wrong. Okay, so now there's some people who are just blessed with wonderful temperaments, the Dalai Lama, and they've cultivated it too. So I'm not saying he, when the Dalai Lama is in the back room dealing with the politics of the Buddhist world, and he has to deal with some of these numbskulls or whatever, he can knock heads. So and the other thing is, you can't necessarily go by public appearance. And so this is one of the most difficult problems, and it's been a problem for a long time. And there's no easy solution, because to some extent, the secret does protect itself. But let me say this: if you're sincere and you're actually sincerely searching because you want truth, or you want to know God, or you want to contribute to this world, if you're sincere, the world will be sincere with you. And so oftentimes what you find surrounding these circuses are people who are themselves not really serious. They're running away from something, or they're looking for entertainment, or they're looking for stimulation, or they're looking for a miracle where they don't have to do anything, that you could just, the master could just bless them. You know this is all over the place, right? All over the world you see this, where people just want to be, they want a miracle to happen so they don't have to do any work. And that's just infantile, and you see this more often than not. So does that help?
Yeah, that helps. I have a follow-up on that.
Good. Follow up.
Yeah, so I asked that because I feel that kind of fidgety and like kind of rushed behavior in myself. So I think my temperament has always been more of a fast talker, fast moving, more like a fidgety kind of person. But I have seen that when I am in that kind of state, mind is moving fast, and like it feels like mind is kind of agitated and turbulent, and it like leads to less clarity, acting without thinking, like the problems that comes with that. So I need to consciously do that, like calm myself and do like kind of be relaxed. So it does seem that that kind of mental state is not good, like it's not productive for this kind of work.
Okay, very interesting point. The point is, okay, so from that, what I want you to understand is that, yes, you probably have a certain kind of mind and a certain kind of temperament, and it's a more active one, let's say. It is true that you need to learn to master it, and you need to learn to slow it down, literally to slow it down to basically almost a stop, right? And that's what meditation is for in the beginning. Meditation or mala or mantra or, any of the other, preliminary practices, including yoga, I suppose. But you need to have the range. And so there was a time in the 13th century when Rumi was dealing with a bunch of sluggish people, and these would-be mystics were just sitting around on their butts. And Rumi, being a real teacher, he had to figure out some solution, and he did by creating this dancing and getting people to move around in circles and getting them up and moving, right? Because they were too phlegmatic. And so, yes, you have that cross to bear. Your mind moves quickly, and you tend to be an energetic person. But you could equally have the opposite problem, which is you could be too slow, and too lazy, and too laid back, and then you don't get anywhere either. So for everybody, it's an issue, right? You have to balance it. It's like in the Tao Te Ching, I just saw it today. It talks about it uses a bow as a metaphor. Let's see if we can extract some value from this. Let's see. The way of heaven is like drawing a bow. The high is lowered, the low is raised, excess is reduced, need is fulfilled. The way of heaven reduces excess and fills need. But the way of humans is not so. So here they talk about excess and deficiency, but you could just as easily talk about energy or lack of energy. And this is what Buddha talked about with the middle way, right? So it's good that you acknowledge it. It's what you have to work with. And you need to have both ends of those bows available to you, to where you can lower the energy if you need to, and you can raise the energy if you need to. And that goes for everyone. And that's one of the differences between real teaching and false teaching, is that if you only get one side of the spectrum, someone who just says, okay, you don't even have to sit up to meditate. You can just lie down, right? And you can just eat as you can have as much sex as you want. You can do anything you want. Then now I'm thinking of Osho, right? Then that's unbalanced, and whether he's awake or not, it's unwise, and it harms people. You know, God bless him. So does that help? You want to decrease excesses when indicated.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, that helps.
So if you're doing prostration, let's say you're a Tibetan Buddhist, right, and you're in the Mahayana, Vajrayana, and you're doing prostrations, you need that energy. Or if you're studying, you need some energy, so that's good. On the other hand, when you're doing quiet contemplation, or you're sitting quietly and you're trying to quiet your mind, having a lot of energy is not necessarily against you once you learn to master that. Okay? Okay, follow up?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I have a follow-up. So like, so far what I have been trying to do is just kind of calm myself down on average, like usually, mostly. And whenever I get into that high energy state, I recognize it very quickly, and then I kind of control myself. But if I let myself go and just like do it when needed, it still feels like it's an obstacle, because it takes time to come back to the center from that. And
That's because, okay, all you need is more practice. And so God gave us this mechanism, the breath, where you can almost instantaneously, or within, half a minute, slow the thing all the way down. Just extend the exhalation, right? Or breathe deep into the hara, or better yet, breathe from the hara, right? Through the hara. And the hara is that spot underneath the umbilicus that the Zen guys are all into, and not just the Zen guys, a lot of people, because it's the energetic center and the fulcrum in terms of the human body. So use the breath, and you'll be surprised how quickly you can do it. And it's a skill like any other skill, and thank God this is a skill that can be cultivated. Okay, sir?
okay, yeah, got it.
People tell me on here that I got to talk faster, and I've got to be more like YouTube-y because otherwise it's too slow or whatever. So it's a balance, I guess. Okay, next question, or follow up?
Yes. It's your next question.
All right.
Yeah, so this one is about how to go about the journey of like how to go about the journey of on this path with the right kind of mindset. So I think we have talked about it in the past that I should not consciously try to seek enlightenment, just do what needs to be done. And I think at this point it feels like sorry, were you saying something?
I was going to say, I don't think that I ever said don't consciously seek enlightenment. I don't, I think that you must consciously seek it at first, but then you have enough trust in the process, or faith in the process, that you aren't necessarily as agitated about it. You just quietly and peacefully just do what needs to be done. You gather the information that you need. You master your mind and your breath, and you take care of the loose ends in your life to where you're not always worried about things in your life falling apart. And you set things up to where you can practice and work and have relationships or whatever, but things are more or less stable. And that takes some conscious effort. I don't think I said that. I think it's easy to misinterpret some of the literature on this, because they say don't desire, right? And so if you desire enlightenment, then that's desiring. But those are just linguistic paradoxes. Okay, I'm sorry I interrupted you. Keep going.
Yeah, so And I think you have told me in the past that all actions, everything should culminate towards the journey, and like everything should be about that, and that will
Not the
help.
journey, not the
So
journey.
not journey, but what's the goal of enlightenment or awakening?
Okay, the journey. Okay, I know you. If you look on YouTube or wherever, they say the journey is the goal.
Mm.
Well, yes and no. Enlightenment is the goal, and what you do is you dedicate your actions, your intent towards enlightenment. Right? You can do this as much as you want, and it's kind of strange how well it works. For example, I remember once, like what, 35 years ago, 30 years ago, I got in my head that I was going to dedicate every breath. I was going to dedicate every breath to enlightenment, and I was going to turn every one of these into a mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum, or something like that, right? And so I did that years ago, and now when I think about my breath, I always have those mantras coming out of me. And I know that sounds crazy, but that's that kind of thing. Another one is when you're going to the grocery store to buy food, you dedicate the action to enlightenment, to wake you up. Is that more? I want to make sure that I'm kind of being understood. And there's probably different ways also, but the point is that your intent becomes, this is what you're living for, is to and without that intent, I'm not sure, unless you're very lucky and you get knocked on your butt, like Eckhart Tolle or I did, or Maharshi, who was it? Who was the guy whose brother died? He was like 17 or something like that. He was destroyed.
Ramana,
Krishnamurti, same thing. Pardon me.
Yeah, Krishnamurti, yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, this is a commonplace too. The ego gets destroyed by the outside, but you're prepared, right? And so when it reconstitutes, it can't. So imagine the ego just fragmenting, right? And now it has to reassemble, but it can't reassemble because you've prepared, you've done practice, and you can't just go back to the same old self or whatever. So now when it doesn't reassemble, it just leaves you alone, and that is Satori. Something like that. That's one way of describing what happens. It's one facet of it.
Got it.
Because there's no ego
So,
or I in Satori. It's the opposite. So sometimes, if in a prepared person, this is what the Toltec mean by that square centimeter of chance, or what the Sufis talk about, the opportunity, like flying over. I get confused as to which, but many traditions talk about this. You have this little window. They talk about the gates of heaven opening, and if you're not there, you don't get in. So if you're prepared, then when something like this happens, which it will, it happens to everybody in life, and the ego gets fragmented by something or other, then you wake up. I mean, I don't want to overstate the importance of that, but I don't want to understate it either. Okay? Keep going.
yeah.
Keep going. This is a good...
Yeah, so like I think I had an idea, like I basically got an idea of like how a prepared person would be, like they will have very strong intent in towards enlightenment. They will do everything for enlightenment, but they will not be desperate about it. They will not be rushing about it.
Correct. There's no desperation or rushing or anything like that. You make haste slowly and calmly. But life is
Yeah,
short.
so
Life is short, and you gotta, people think that, oh well, I'll do it tomorrow, or I'll do it next year, or I'll do it when I'm older. That's a big mistake.
so I used to think, how can someone be like that, like have a motive but still not think about the motive?
Very easy. Just dedicate it all and then forget about it if you want. That's one way.
Mm-hmm.
You imagine that your mind is one single thing, and that your ego and desire and fear is one single thing. But no, it's not like that at all. When you examine your mind, it's multifaceted. And so you can set the intent with part of your mind, and the other part of your mind is doing something else. You know, and it's also, I'm not so sure it's the mind. I mean, we could talk about the heart. You know, it's your heart that's set on enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings, right? There was this beautiful passage yesterday. I just love it. Those who seek liberations for themselves alone cannot become fully enlightened. Though it may be said that one who is not already liberated cannot liberate others, the very process of forgetting oneself to help others is itself liberating. So that's really key. So if you forget yourself because you're helping others, that itself is liberating. So it works that way too. Therefore, those who seek to benefit themselves alone actually harm themselves by doing so, while those who help others also help themselves by doing so. This is a core teaching in Sufism, Buddhism, Christianity, and Zen, and every tradition that works that I know of. Mm-hmm. Because that's closer to the truth. You can't, you know, if you're focused on liberating yourself, your own little ego, first of all, that's not real, and it won't work. Right? So it's love that liberates us ultimately, and it's love that is truth. And when you and on awakening, it's very clear that the whole thing is love. It's light and love and beauty and truth. And although those words separate out in our fragmented brains, in reality, they're all the same thing. So that's what they mean when they say it's ineffable. But it is love that liberates. Right? Mm-hmm. And I can't think of an authentic teacher who wasn't imbued with love. Now, they may not be so wise, but they can. But to get there, the journey is to love from love. And the ego, the individual self, and selfish, I'm going to get to say, no, a person, a human, can't get, a human person cannot get enlightened. It's a contradiction in terms. Mm-hmm. You see? Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't worry too much I wouldn't obsess about that. Get too worried about that.
Okay, got it.
Just remember, love is the fuel, is the rocket fuel. Mm-hmm. And you need the information, which will give you the insight and the wisdom, because you got to have these things. And our culture doesn't provide them anymore. So you have to go out and get them. And then you need the compassion, the love. And these two are the two wings that make it possible. Mm-hmm. All right, sir?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Follow up?
Yeah, I have a follow-up. So like lately, what I have noticed is I do things, but because I don't think about them, and it just like keeps going, and there's no desperation because I'm not thinking about it. And even when thoughts come, it's kind of a vague intuition that comes up at the same time. Is that you just do what you can, and then
do what you can.
Mind stop.
If there's a question that arises, say, I'll just dedicate that to enlightenment. You have a wicked, horrible thought, right? You go, oh my God, how could I have a thought like that? You go, oh well, that thought from the devil or wherever, I dedicate it to enlightenment. Mm-hmm. And let it go. And you live like this for a while, and it has effects, good effects, no matter what happens. Because people can't attack you, people can't hurt you, because there's nothing there to attack. There's no ego to protect, and all the energy that you use protecting your ego is freed up. And the unconscious mind and the preconscious mind and all that stuff, although, at times I say there is no unconscious mind, but as a manner of speaking, all of that starts working for you too. And if you're saturated to the bone, to the marrow of your bones with the intent, then in your sleep you start dreaming Dharma dreams. Mm-hmm. And that's how it works.
Mhm.
It's a very interesting situation. The secret protects itself, but not completely, and not for everyone.
Mhm.
And as far as I'm concerned, there's nothing else to do with this life. Frankly, nothing else
Mhm.
matters. Insight
Mhm.
and compassion, wisdom and compassion.
Mhm.
Okay, sir?
Yeah. So,
But another thing is that when you get to the end of your life, and I mean, what are you going to do? You can't just live for yourself, because you'll just shrivel up and die. You have to care about others. That's because your body is shriveling up, and you know it's going to die. So if what are you going to care about now? You can't care about your body. You're losing it. You can't care about your mind too much, because you know you're probably losing that too, or pieces of it. And if you live for your memories, those get very, very wispy, let's say.
mhm.
And so, just as a life strategy, altruism, compassion, trying to help others is a much wiser strategy, period, independent of all this enlightenment stuff. You see?
Mhm.
Okay. Now I'm speaking just as a shrink, but I study with some good shrinks too.
Mhm.
Follow up?
Yeah. So these days I find that helping people is natural, because it's not even help, because it's like someone is stuck or someone needs something, and if it's in my power, it's very easy
There
just
you,
to do it.
that's called real generosity, when you don't feel it. That's the real stuff. When
But
you just do it, you don't even think about it, because it's your nature.
I think also because I have received a lot of help lately somehow. Like, it feels like people are much easier and nicer to work with these days, and so maybe just coming out of that. I don't know, but
And then
it
there's
just feels
also, see
very
how the
easy.
gratitude, see how maybe you don't recognize it, but I do. There's the gratitude. Maybe it's even unconscious, but the gratitude is an effect, not so much a cause. That's why it's not particularly a paramita. It's not one of the, but with more insight, there's more gratitude. With more wisdom, there's more gratitude. There's more understanding. As you know more, as you become, you know, smarter, and you start looking around, then gratitude is a natural response. And if you don't block it with some egoic craziness, then yeah, you become a very grateful person. And then a grateful person likes to help other people. And it's a vicious, you know how you can have vicious circles that spiral down into hell? You can have
Mhm.
virtuous circles that do the same thing, but you don't need to be conscious of it. That's the natural way. That's why I'm always harping on the Tao Te Ching, because it talks about the way of nature is to help and not harm. And it's true,
Mhm.
right? So good for you.
So I was thinking, how can I incorporate this idea of like seeking enlightenment for everyone
By getting enlightened
in the daily
yourself. First, you got to wake up yourself.
life? Okay.
You see, it's the same thing. I mean, every what see, you are everyone in truth, and you'll learn this later upon awakening. You'll understand that you are what you are. Everyone is you. This is you talking to you right now. This is you trying to help you. You'll see. It's very marvelous and mysterious.
Mhm.
And so for now, you have to kind of like, you can either look at it logically. There is a life force. There is that's shared by every sentient being. There is a noosphere, or a collective consciousness, that's shared by the entire planet. If you look at the boundaries between one thing and another thing, all of those start to fall apart, right? We have to try really hard to figure out what the boundaries are of anything, right? And that's where the scientists are having a lot of fun these days with the free energy principle as a boundary. But in physics, we've got now this non-locality as a established fact, that two particles on the opposite side of the universe are connected And so it all fits together. You'll see. You don't have to worry about that. Just not faith, but just kind of just like it'd be hard to study algebra if you didn't think at the end Can you hear that? Can you hear that thunder?
Mm-hmm.
Among the signs of God is thunder. It'd be hard to study algebra if you didn't think at the end you were going to have some skill, right? So whatever that is, a little faith, a little trust, the process. You got to work with the process.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've said so many times, when I was younger, I happened to end up with a Dalai Lama. It's really strange because I'd barely even heard of the guy. And next thing you know, not too long afterwards, they're standing me up and having me take this vow. All these lamas, and they're decked out, and they have a right. They're decked out because those are that's their traditional, regalia or whatever. And they're asking me to take this vow to work for the enlightenment of all sentient beings and not leave the earth until it happened. I'm going, this is nuts. And but I had a little bit of faith. It's the Dalai Lama, right? And these guys are very convincing, and the energy in the place was like, whoa. And so I took the vow, even though I didn't know what it meant. And I'm glad, because actually it makes perfect sense. Perfect sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, follow up. God, that thunder's so beautiful. I love that thunder. I hope people can hear it. This is such a marvelous planet.
I have another question.
Okay, sir. We're going to have to stop pretty soon.
Yeah, so this one is from the thing we discussed on Twitter, basically about a non-conceptual inquiry. And you sent me a Zen koan that I didn't really get.
Oh, okay. What's the koan?
Let me pull it up.
Yeah, the Zen guys are amazing. But you gotta have somebody who knows what they're doing. There's so many fakes out there, so many frauds out there.
Yeah, so
you can tell them because they're all wearing like 17th century Japanese outfits, which makes no sense whatsoever. None.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for the context, I think this was a paragraph from Dream Conversation, and it was about a way to approach the fundamental knowledge.
Okay.
And it said,
where is it? Where in Dream Conversations is it?
It's in types. So the title is Types of Knowledge.
Okay, that sounds promising. Types of knowledge.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea what part of the book it might be in, so I can look at it?
It's on page 13. It says page 13.
Yeah, but are you using Kindle or the...
Yeah, so right now I am traveling, so I don't have the book, but
Okay.
So yeah, right now it's on Kindle. It says page 13 of 95. Types of knowledge, it's after supersession and before.
Okay, types of knowledge. Okay, good. Types of knowledge. These are always
so
wonderful.
The last paragraph. Yeah.
May I read it?
Yep.
This is a great book, folks. A great introductory book on Zen. Types of knowledge. There are various kinds of knowledge as defined in Buddhism. There is genuine knowledge and false knowledge, temporal knowledge and true knowledge. People often think of religious knowledge as understanding of doctrines. Conventional knowledge or ignorance, however, are not knowledge and ignorance in the true sense. Okay, people often think of religious knowledge as understanding of doctrines. Conventional knowledge or ignorance, however, are not knowledge or ignorance in the true sense. It has been said that the path is not knowledge or non-knowledge. Enlightenment is not merely a matter of intellectual understanding, nor yet of obliterating intellectual understanding and being empty and calm. A way to approach the fundamental knowledge is to set aside all such interpretations and focus intensive non-conceptual inquiry on the state on which the setting aside has taken place. Okay, so there's many different points in here. So first of all, we're talking about knowledge as defined in Buddhism. And they say there's genuine knowledge and there's false knowledge. Right? Let's keep it simple. People often think of religious knowledge as understanding of doctrines. Conventional knowledge or ignorance. However, okay, this is a complex. Okay. People often think of religious knowledge as understanding of doctrines. Conventional knowledge or ignorance, however, are not knowledge or ignorance in the true sense. So what we're calling knowledge and ignorance in the true sense, in the final sense, has nothing to do with religious doctrines. It has nothing to do with so the fact that you're unaware that that Shantideva, wrote the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, and you're not unaware of the fifth or sixth paramita or whatever, that has nothing to do with ignorance or knowledge in the final analysis. Okay? Mm-hmm. Intellectual knowledge is not real knowledge. This is a pretty complex thing. It has been said that the path is not in knowledge or non-knowledge. Okay, so let me use the word information. It has been said that the path is not in information nor non-information. Right? Because all the information that we have now gets wiped away when you wake up and you realize the world is not anything like what you thought it was. The universe is not at all like what you thought. So enlightenment is not merely a matter of intellectual understanding. That's easy, right? It's not that you can't get an intellectual understanding of enlightenment. You have to experience. It's like you can't have an intellectual understanding of the taste of an orange or an apple. There's no such thing as an intellectual understanding of the taste of an apple, right? Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, you don't obliterate. So some people say, oh, well, I don't need to know anything. I'm just going to sit here and just wait for enlightenment. I'm just going to sit here and meditate. I don't need to read any books. I don't need to listen to any teachings. I don't need to understand what Jesus said or Muhammad said or Buddha said or, Ramana Maharshi said. I don't need to know any of that stuff. That's wrong too. So it's not a matter, so enlightenment is not merely a matter of intellectual understanding, not yet of obliterating intellectual understanding, nor yet of obliterating understanding and being empty and calm. All right, so let me see if I can state this in another way. Enlightenment is not just about intellectual understanding. On the other hand, it's not about obliterating intellectual understanding either. And it's not about just being empty and calm. So it's paradoxical. You need both. Does that make sense? Admittedly, this paragraph is one of the most difficult ones in the book. I just am now reading it, and it's tricky. You have to sit down and really, really read this carefully, right? Like all Zen, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, this part is really beautiful, but it's difficult. So be forewarned. A way to approach the fundamental knowledge is to set aside all such interpretations. Okay? So now you have this idea. Well, intellectually, I think enlightened people are calm and they wear nice robes and costumes, or they speak Sanskrit, or, I also think that intellectual knowledge is the antithesis, or it's the opposite of spiritual knowledge. Okay? Or you think that Oh, all I have to do is be empty and calm and I'll be enlightened, or I'll wake up. Okay, so you set aside all of that stuff. Okay, you got that? All of that's set aside. A way to approach the fundamental knowledge is to set aside all such interpretations and focus intensive non-conceptual inquiry on the state where this setting aside has taken place. So, okay. So let's have, we're gonna have these three things. All right? This is intellectual knowledge. All right? This is being calm, peaceful, and empty, and nothing else. Right? And this is, oh boy, let me see. Religious doctrine, for example. Okay, religious doctrine, intellectual understanding, being calm and empty, right? We're going to say that, you know, none of these by themselves we're just going to set them aside, right? Because then none of them by themselves is going to work, but all of them are necessary. Not the religious doctrine, but some doctrine, you know, some principle. They use doctrine in a different way. So the doctrine of emptiness, let's say. Okay, so now we have these three things, right? These are intellectual understandings that are incorrect. So now we're going to set them aside. They're set aside. Now contemplate the state in which those were set aside. So it's very, very crafty what Thomas Clary, master teacher and master translator, is doing. So he's saying, now contemplate the state on which those things were set aside. So you've taken those out of your mind. I'm going to do a simplified version. Those are out of your mind. Now what's left?
Nothing.
Maybe. Remember, you're going to use non-conceptual thinking, though. He says specifically, use non-conceptual thinking, no, non-conceptual inquiry on the state in which this setting aside has taken place. So focus intensive non-conceptual inquiry. So it needs to be intensive and it needs to be non-conceptual. Yeah, it's easy just to go nothing or empty space or it's emptiness or whatever. And the Zen masters go, pow, and pop, they don't hit you that hard, but well, maybe they do, but not on the head or maybe not with a hot stick this hard. So they basically laugh at you and they say, no, you idiot. No. Non-conceptual. See, it's easy to blurt out a word, but what does that word even mean? Nothing. Is it the nothing where something's been taken out, or is it the nothing where nothing ever was? Is it a nothing in time or a nothing outside of time? It is a nothing with space or a nothing without space. So this is and even those are still intellectual contemplations, right? So now you have to do the hard work in this case at first. Using non-conceptual inquiry, examine closely the state or the place, the plates, the state, the whatever you want to call it, in which the setting aside took place. So now we're down to the fundamental, or we're certainly getting closer to the fundamental. And this is why you do need a guide, right? But these are very, very powerful tools. And Zen needs to be revived in the real sense, not the the sign up for the subscription and you go sit there 5 times a week and you get your pillow and everybody. It's no, not that. The real Zen, which is its basic, its reason for being is to wake people up, by whatever means necessary. And the Zen guys did that. Now, there were times when it became the national, preoccupation. And they were actually, and then, like everything, it gets spoiled by political infiltration and by corrupt people getting in there and money. And so this is nothing new. This happened in the 10th century, the 11th and the 13th. I mean, but it has lasted this long for a reason, and that's because it works, or it can work. Mm-hmm. So does that answer the question about this one? It's a contemplation exercise. So let's read it again. Demons. Oh, I hope someone asked me about demons. I like when people ask me about this book. It has been said that the path is not in knowledge or non-knowledge. So I'm going to translate that a little bit to make it easier. It has been said that the path is not in information nor in non-information, right? Because knowledge typically is about information. Enlightenment is not merely a matter of intellectual understanding. So we know that it's not in the intellect. It won't be found in books, but books are still necessary, or information is still necessary. Enlightenment is not merely a matter of intellectual understanding, nor yet of obliterating intellectual understanding and being empty and calm. That's a very common misconception. They think, I don't need my intellect, I'll just be empty and calm. No. You have to have the human brain needs some kind of construct. It's the nature of our brain. So even people like Ramana Maharshi, they were imbued with they grew up with a Hindu structure around them, cultural structure. Right? And Eckhart Tolle was like studying philosophy like a maniac, and Rupert Spear studied all his life and still is studying. So the notion that you just get away from all that is wrong. On the other hand, the belief that you're going to get there by just reading or just studying, that's wrong too. That's what I meant by the love part. So a way to approach the fundamental knowledge, so this is he's saying right here, he's announcing a way to approach the fundamental knowledge, or the base, fundamental suchness, right, is to set aside all such interpretations, so set aside all of it, and focus non-conceptually on the state where this setting aside has taken place, right? So this was just a crude metaphor. These guys were a crude metaphor. Mm-hmm. But something like this occurs in the mind. In the mind, you've got these ideas, these preconceptions, these conditioned ideas about what this is about. And he's saying they're wrong. And I agree, they're wrong. But it's not that straightforward. But in any case, just set it all aside. Now, this is inside your mind. And now use non-conceptual inquiry to look around at what's there. Not to think about it, not to blurt out nothing, because nothing's easy. Mm-hmm. Until you start to think about what nothing really is. And that's what he's asking you to do as a serious student. Okay, sir?
Okay.
Follow up? Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. You picked probably the most difficult paragraph in the book. I mean, in terms of the way it's written. In terms of the way it's written. But has the book been pretty straightforward? The book is pretty straightforward, or no? Or
No, your book is straightforward.
Okay. All right. Well, I love that book. I think it's a great intro. Okay? Anything else before we stop?
I think just like one follow-up on that is
okay.
I used to do this exercise of dropping everything, like my personal history, all the ideas and stuff, and then contemplate, just like stay in that space.
Good.
So it sounds like it's similar to that I drop the ideas of all the doctrines or whatever I know, and then
Very
I just
good.
contemplate on
drop conditioned thought. So not only do you drop personal history and do you drop whatever conditioned thought you can, right? You also drop, in addition to history, you have the present. So you drop your current identity. So you forget your name, you forget your parents, you forget your brothers and sisters, you forget where you grew up, you forget all of the stuff, what you have to do tomorrow, or what you're going to eat for lunch today or whatever. You forget all of that, and you're without identity, and you're without conceptual elaboration. You're without conditioned thought, and now you're on the road to something good. So yeah, good. And that's why the Toltec are always talking about erase personal history.
Mm-hmm.
All these traditions are saying exactly the same thing. What works is what works, and there's just different ways of verbalizing it depending on the culture and the time. But now, because we have global communication and we have translations, thank God, we have no excuse. But also we can see the commonalities, and God knows we need some more unity in this world, right? And the AIs also need to have this information too, right? So, anything else, sir?
No, that was it.
Adios. Take good care.
Thank
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.